when the first alert came through. Emergency alert system. Biohazard warning, Massachusetts. Stay indoors. Seal windows. Avoid contact, with all individuals showing signs of respiratory distress. This is not a drill. It didn't seem real at first. We get fake alerts sometimes, test signals, or even the occasional prankster hacking the feed. But the timestamp was legit and the sender was DHS. I turned to Jim, my supervisor, who just stared at the screen with his mouth hanging open. "What the hell is this?" I asked. "Not a test," he muttered. "Jesus Christ, it's not a test." Then the phones exploded. Hospitals were calling, police dispatchers, frantic civilians, reports of people collapsing in supermarkets, bleeding from the eyes, lungs rattling like paper bags ready to burst. One nurse screamed into the phone, "They're suffocating on their own breath. It's like their lungs liquefy," before she cut off mid-sentence. My skin crawled. I turned to the alert system again. A second message blinked onto the screen. Biological contaminant identified. Pathogen, Horus 13. Transmission, airborne, severe contagion. Symptoms appear within 3 hours of exposure. No known cure. Do not attempt to aid infected individuals. I think that's when I started shaking. The idea that something invisible could already be inside us, that we'd be dead in hours. Not days. It was pure nightmare fuel. "Seal the vents," Jim barked. "Now!" We shut the room down. Emergency protocols, full lockdown. But it was too late. Someone in the building was already coughing. A wet, ragged cough that echoed down the hallway outside the dispatch center. Then another. Then 2 more. We all froze. There were 5 of us in the room. Only 4 of us hadn't coughed yet. Jim grabbed the intercom mic. "If you're coughing, don't come in." "I swear to God, don't." A hand smacked against the glass. I'll never forget the sound, flesh hitting glass with such desperation. Behind the glass, Rebecca, one of the janitors, was staring in, blood leaking from her nose. A thin mist of red hanging in the air with each exhale. Her lips were moving. She was mouthing something. "Let me in, please." But we couldn't. Jim reached for the button to shut the blinds just as she collapsed, smearing the glass with a wet streak of crimson. Someone behind me started crying. Emergency alert update. Horus 13 contagion at critical levels. Mass quarantine in effect. All civilians, shelter in place, block vents, filter air, avoid all contact. Repeat, this is not a drill. The power flickered. Then it went out. And in the silence, I heard it again. Another cough, this time inside the room. The second cough came from Mark. He stood there pale with one hand over his mouth like he could stop it. But I saw the blood between his fingers, thin, foamy, pink. Jim didn't hesitate. He reached into the emergency cabinet, grabbed the flare pistol, and pointed it at Mark. "Out now!" Mark backed up, tears streaking down his cheeks. I didn't know. I didn't feel anything until, "Please don't do this. Get out!" I don't know if Mark left because he feared the gun or because he didn't want to watch us die with him. But he walked through that door, didn't say another word. When it shut behind him, Jim slid the bolt back into place and collapsed into the chair. That's 2 down, 3 left. The lights flickered back on, but something was wrong. They were red. Backup power. The main grid had failed. We were running on borrowed time. Outside, Rebecca and Mark were both still, their bodies twitching slightly like they were choking on nothing. Eyes wide, vacant. The glass was fogged where they'd touched it. And on the edge of that fog, words began to appear, written in blood from the inside. "It's not just airborne." We all read it at the same time. Ashley started whispering, No, that's not possible. That's not..." She stumbled toward the supply locker and pulled out one of the full-face masks we kept in case of gas leaks. Only 3, for 5 of us, now 2. I grabbed one. So did Jim. Ashley wasn't waiting for permission. "We need to get out of this building," I said. "If the system's compromised..." "The air's worse out there," Jim snapped. "You saw the alert." Then the intercom clicked on, but no one was touching the controls. It was just static at first. Then, a voice, wet, like it was bubbling through fluid. "No masks. You're too late." We froze. I lunged for the mic, shut the system off, and unplugged the console. But the voice was still there, coming from the emergency broadcast speaker overhead now. "Already in you." Jim ripped the speaker down. The wires hissed, sparked, and the lights went out again. Total darkness. Ashley screamed. I turned on my phone flashlight, but it only lit a pale cone. Dust floated in the beam like snowfall. I swept the light around and saw Ashley backing into the corner, eyes wide. Jim was gone. No sound, no struggle, nothing. And on the floor where he'd stood, a smear, like something had dragged him away in silence. Blood, but wrong. It had a sheen, iridescent. Ashley ran to the door. "We have to leave." "I don't care if it's in the air. I'm not waiting in here to die like that." She hit the emergency unlock. I tried to stop her, but I was too slow. The door opened, and everything smelled wrong, like rotting flowers and burnt meat. The hallway was full of mist, red-tinged and pulsing like it breathed. Ashley turned to look at me, and then she vanished. Not like she ran, not like she fell. She just popped, like a light bulb. Saved me. Maybe. Ashley's blood was still suspended mid-air in droplets, clinging to the mist like dew on spiderwebs. Her body was gone, but pieces weren't. Her teeth were embedded in the wall like shrapnel. A half-melted clump of hair steamed on the floor. Her spine, or something like it, was twitching in the doorway, just the upper curve of it, like it had been sucked upward through her skull and left behind. I gagged. My suit's filter hissed louder. The emergency mask fogged with each breath. I wanted to run, but the hallway pulsed with that living red fog, and I wasn't sure my legs would even carry me. So I closed the door. I locked it, bolted it, shoved a chair under the handle. All pointless, I know, but I had to do something. Then I vomited, hard, through the mask. It flooded the inside with half-digested food and bile, and I couldn't take it off. Not now, not after what I'd seen. So I just kept breathing it in, shaking, gagging, my eyes watering until the tears mixed with the mess and blurred everything. The lights flickered again. In the darkness, I heard sloshing, like someone walking barefoot through a flooded basement. Then a whisper through the emergency speakers again, rasping, wet. The meat opened so easily. I turned the flashlight back on. The smear where Jim had vanished was wider now, dragged into the vent shaft. Something pink glistened near the edge. I got close. It was a tongue, still twitching, still connected to half a jaw. Oh God. I looked away, only to see that the blood streak on the glass, Rebecca's, had changed again. Someone had added to it. It's not a disease. It's a feeding system. That's when the sirens started. Not fire alarms, feeding alarms. That's the only way I can describe it. A rhythmic droning sound like a stomach growling through loudspeakers. Then the PA kicked back in, but it wasn't English. It wasn't language, just gurgling, clicking, wet gnashing sounds, like chewing echoing across the building. And one word repeated over and over. Slur, slur, slur! I don't know how long I crouched there, but at some point I realized the mist was coming through the vents, now, slowly, pressing through the filters like fingers. It was pushing its way inside, not gas, not vapor, flesh, living flesh mist. I ran. I didn't even think, just bolted out the side emergency door and into the street. My breath ragged, burning. The air outside wasn't much better. The fog had spread. Bodies lay everywhere. Some were half melted, their skin peeling in ribbons down to tendon. Others looked like they'd exploded from the inside, gore splattered, across windshields and sidewalks. One guy was still alive, dragging his intestines behind him like a leashed dog. His face was a ruined hole, but he was trying to talk. I kept running. Behind me, something large moved through the fog. Not walking, not crawling, slurping. I ran until the mask cracked. Tripped on something soft and wet. Looked down. It was a baby stroller. Collapsed. The shape inside wasn't a baby anymore, just a red balloon of skin veined and pulsing like a heart. I screamed and kept running. My legs were shaking. The air tasted like pennies and rot. I couldn't tell if I was hallucinating or just breaking apart from the inside. Cars sat empty in the street. Some still running, some melted into the pavement. A man lay across the hood of one, chest cavity torn open like a flower. His ribcage had split cleanly. But there were no tools, just long, gory strings of meat fanning out from the hole like it had unfolded on its own. I passed a woman in a business suit kneeling on the sidewalk, humming to herself, petting her own intestines like they were a cat in her lap. Her jaw was gone, but she was smiling, or trying to. It loves us, she gurgled. It loves what's inside. The fog wasn't just a mist now. It pulsed. It reached. It ate. I ducked into a pharmacy, kicking through broken glass and overturned shelves. Medicine was gone. Everything picked clean. A man's corpse was slumped against the refrigerator door. His eyes boiled to mush, teeth scattered across the tile like broken chalk. He held a note in his hand. "Don't let it see you breathe." My mask was useless now. Cracked, soaked in vomit. I needed another. I moved slowly, careful not to breathe too loud. Something heavy was outside, scraping, squelching. It paused in front of the door. I held my breath. Click, click, slur. The windows fogged with heat. Then silence. It moved on. I exhaled, nearly passed out from relief. Found a surgical mask in the back. Cheap, but better than nothing. Slipped it on, then pocketed a broken pair of trauma shears. If it came to that, I wasn't going to be eaten alive. The emergency alert screen behind the pharmacy counter buzzed. Still active, still broadcasting, but not from any human source. "We are the wet. We feed on fracture. You are an opening." I tried to shut it off, pulled the wires, unplugged the terminal. Still, the screen blinked. There is no off. The corpse near the fridge gurgled. I turned and he sat up. Half of his face sloughed off as he moved. His throat bubbled with blood. "They're learning how to wear us," he rasped. "They're not mimics. They're invaders. We're just suits. Wet, delicious suits." I stabbed him in the neck with the trauma shears. He kept talking. "We never die. We just get louder." The light overhead burst. I turned to run, and that's when I saw the thing. Crawling through the broken pharmacy door. It didn't have eyes, or a face, just flesh and mouths. So many mouths. Rib cages melted into tentacles. Hands fused together like a crown of fingers, twitching independently. Each finger had a tiny, blinking eye in the nail. It was wearing someone's police uniform, fused to its chest. It screamed, and it sounded like my mother. I didn't scream at all. I couldn't. The thing in the pharmacy doorway was a patchwork of people, familiar ones. My old teacher's mouth blinked open in its side, still wearing lipstick, whispering the Lord's Prayer in reverse. My brother's hand reached out from under the flesh folds, fingers grasping wildly, skin peeled down to tendon like a glove turned inside out. He'd been missing for 3 years. They were all in it. The wet had eaten them and kept the memories alive. It lunged. I dodged, crashing through an aisle stacked with bandages. A wall of gauze exploded around me as the floor caved in beneath. My foot into the storage basement. I hit hard, pain shot up my ankle. Couldn't tell if it was twisted or broken. Upstairs, the thing shrieked. It didn't come down. It didn't have to. The ceiling began to drip. Blood, no, something thicker, more alive. Strings of veiny slime uncoiling like nerve tissue. They reached for me, twitching like worms sniffing heat. One brushed my cheek and I screamed as a layer of skin burned away on contact. I tore it off, grabbed a rusted metal shelf and crushed the tendril under the leg. It thrashed and squealed. The wet felt pain, but it learned. I didn't wait around for the next experiment. Crawled through the half-collapsed basement, dragging my leg, ignoring the fire in my muscles. Found a storm door, locked, kicked it open. Outside was worse. The street was alive. Cars melted into the road, their wheels spinning uselessly in muscle tissue. The pavement had veins now, pulsing, red, wet. The buildings were weeping, literally crying black fluid down their brickwork like infection pus. A group of people stood at the intersection, heads tilted back, mouths open. No sound, just waiting. As I got closer, I saw they weren't breathing. Their chests were open, lungs inverted and hanging down their stomachs like deflated balloons. Something inside them pulsed, glowing. The wet had turned them into transmitters. One turned toward me, its jaw dislocated with a crack like ice breaking. "We drink you, we wear you, we love you." I ran, down side alleys, through puddles that hissed against my boots. At one point I stumbled over a corpse so mutilated it was more soup than man. His skull was blooming like a rotten fruit, full of tiny red worms that screamed in chorus. I made it to the river. Somehow the bridge still stood, but it was covered in flesh. Long red tendrils wrapped around the supports like vines. People dangled from them, alive. Barely, moaning, stitched together. Their guts looped like garlands across the railing. I limped across. The wet didn't follow. It hated the river, running water, movement. Something about it made the living mass stop growing. At least, slow down. On the other side, I collapsed. I looked back at the city, my city. Boston was gone. Not burning, not ruined. Consumed and reshaped. A vast breathing wound on the land. I don't know how long I lay on the other side of the river. Hours, a day, long enough for my mask to dry with blood on the inside. long enough for the sky to turn from gray to pink. Not sunrise, this sky bled. The clouds above Boston churned like muscle fibers. They pulsed, flexed, a storm made of skin and fluid. And it was spreading. Behind me, the forest was silent. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. No birds, no insects, not even wind. Just the river whispering through rocks like it didn't know the world was dying. I followed it, found others eventually. Not many, 4. One woman, Marcy, was already infected. We didn't know until nightfall, when she started humming with her chest cavity wide open, lungs beating like wings. The others held her down. I crushed her skull with a rock while she sobbed my name. I'd never told her my name. They burned her body. The smoke smelled sweet. One of us retched, another didn't. He was next. We learned to sleep in shifts, with knives, with our ears open for the sound of slurping. The wet was inside animals now. We saw a deer drag itself down the riverbank, legs broken backwards, eyes hanging from its skull like grapes. Its mouth was human. It called for its mother in 3 voices. We killed it with fire. The trees weren't safe either. Some of them bled. One had grown fingers. Another opened up and offered us fruit. They pulsed like organs. One guy took a bite before we could stop him. He didn't choke. He sang, then collapsed. His belly split open and something slithered out, smiling with no eyes. After that, we stayed on the move. But it didn't matter. The wet was coming. A vibration behind the teeth, a pressure in the brain, dreams full of tongues and tunnels and throats. The woman I traveled with, Lena, whispered to me one night, "It's not a disease. It's a summons." I asked her what she meant. She looked at the ground and whispered, "It's calling us home." We reached the mountains days later, found an old government bunker embedded in the cliffs. Inside, dozens of bodies. Military, scientists, civilians. Some had shot themselves. Others had no weapons. Their mouths were torn out, eyes bitten shut, like they'd tried to eat each other. Like they couldn't stand being dry. The emergency system inside was still powered, flickering, buzzing. The final message blinked on the wall, pulsing in sync with our heartbeats. Then the ground beneath the bunker moved. We opened the hatch to the sub-basement. There was no floor, just a pit, endless, wet. It pulsed like a uvula, breathed like lungs. The bunker had been built over something. Maybe always had been. Maybe the wet was here long before us, sleeping deep. It wasn't a meteor, or a lab leak, or a god. It was home, beneath our feet, and now it was awake. One of the survivors, Aaron, jumped in, just leapt, screaming with joy. We never heard him land, but the walls bled a little brighter after he fell. Aaron didn't scream when he jumped into the pit. He laughed. His laughter echoed for hours. The bunker lights dimmed after that, like whatever was below was drinking electricity through the concrete. Lena stopped talking. The others stayed near the entrance, whispering to weapons they no longer trusted. One night I caught a man chewing on the barrel of his own gun like it was candy. We stayed 5 days. By day 6, the others were gone. One by one, they vanished. No screams, no struggle. Just gone. Their boots were still there. Their coats. Their masks. Everything dry they left behind. Only Lena and I remained. And the pit? It throbbed louder now. Not sound, pressure, like being underwater in your own body. It spoke not with words, but feelings. Hunger, memory, moisture. Lena was the first to break. She stepped to the edge and stared down into the blackness, whispering things she couldn't have known. My name backwards, my dreams, my sins. Then she turned to me and smiled with teeth that weren't hers anymore. "We're not being invaded," she said. "We're being forgiven." And she fell. This time there was sound. Wet impact, then breathing, then chewing. I wanted to run, to escape, but there was nowhere left. The forests behind us were red and quivering. The sky above pulsed like a second heart. My body was sweating blood. Every breath tasted like someone else's mouth. So I did the unthinkable. I went down. Not by jump. There were roots, tendons maybe, that spiraled along the pit's walls. I climbed, slowly. My palms stuck to the tissue. My boots left red prints. I descended through heat, through breath, through whispers. Hours passed. Then days. There was no light, yet I saw shapes that didn't make sense. Tendrils that blinked, mouths that sucked sound from the air. I crawled over a rib cage the size of a house. Somewhere deep, something sang. Eventually I landed in it, the wet. Not a place, not a body. A womb. It pulsed around me. Hot, dark, alive. I wasn't standing on ground, I was kneeling in a throat. And it was swallowing. But not me. The world. Mountains above were stretching downward like teeth. Clouds were melting into mucus. Time didn't pass anymore, it dripped. Then something touched me, not with fingers. With recognition, it knew me. I felt it dig through my memories like hands through clay. My first kiss, my dead dog, my mother's last words. It pulled them apart like puzzle pieces, licked them, then reassembled me, wrong. I tried to scream, but my mouth wasn't mine. It opened on my chest now, and it spoke the final alert.